right. Hey, Varun. Nice for you to be here on the Gelato podcast. And also, hey, Sam. Nice to have you back.
Hey, Luis. Thanks for having us back, man.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me here as well.
All right. This is episode 2 in the mini Clob series that I decided to start last week with Sam on Rise. So if you haven't listened to that yet, listener, make sure to go and check that out. We're here today with Varun from Hibachi, and he's building a very special exchange. I'm not sure if like on-chain exchange is actually the right word. It's probably, I think you have a whole meme going on how it's not the right word, but it's using crypto technology. There's ZK, there's blobs, it's CLOBs on blobs. And it's I think the sort of tagline is that it's privacy first or privacy first, depending on your accent. I think you say privacy, Varun. So yeah, let's jump straight in. Varun, who are you? What have you been building in the past? I know you've also been building HashFlow, which was quite successful. I think we talked to you on the Arrakis front in the past, a couple of times maybe. So yeah, what made you build HashFlow, and how did you go from there to also opening shop with Hibachi?
No, absolutely. So yeah, I do tend to say privacy, but then again, I spend enough time in America to say privacy. So it kind of is a mix of both. So, but no, I think HashFlow was, the first projects I started in 2020, 2021-ish, right? So we kicked off as an RFQ platform. So the whole idea was to bring professional market makers on chain to give them access to DeFi flow. So that has been live, still kicking, right? So basically plugged into over 15 makers, and 20 plus taker venues, including wallets, aggregators, and we do nearly 50 million a day in volume every day. So it's pretty much any major venue where there is taker flow and any market maker wants access to it, it serves that purpose. So that's been live for quite some time now. And then Hibachi is it's an interesting one. Right? With HashFlow as a B2B product, that was mainly driven towards backend, working with different PMMs, building the infra for them to access DeFi flow. Hibachi is a very consumer-facing B2C, a proper exchange, yeah. In that, so it's interesting, right? Because we thought about the idea of having something like Hibachi back in 2019, and at the time you're okay, we need to build an exchange. The whole design philosophy was that we don't need to build every component on chain. We just need to prove the critical transactions on chain. Everything else could be off chain. But this is also when Ethereum was the canonical only L1 that was functioning, right? There was no Solana, there was no performance L1s at the time. So okay, so that's so I think much of the design philosophy at the time was informed by that. But at the same time, if you want performance, the best way to achieve any high performance, high fidelity applications is to build the app, right? So make it centralized, and you can get that performance. But then, when it comes to financial applications, you need certain critical components to be proven on chain, so you can hold the actors accountable for what they're doing. So turns out ZK proofs were a promising technology back then, and they are as we stand today. But 2019, it wasn't quite possible to build what we could today because of cost constraints and the infra and the amount of time it took to generate ZK proofs. If you ask somebody in 2019, they would yeah, ZK is the end game, but it's at least 5 years away, right? So, and now, 6 years fast forward, you're sort of there where you can finally use zero-knowledge proofs to basically do more interesting things than you could 6 years ago, right? So 6 years fast forward, I think we have Hibachi, which we launched about 6 months ago in alpha phase, and then we really did a more stronger push a month ago. So I think that's really has been the real launch stage for it, right? So and the idea is to it basically hits on three. It's as a definition, it's a privacy first, ultra fast, decentralized exchange. Now, really how to break it down into 3 components, things that we care about. there's, one is performance, where you, as an exchange, you want like low latency, you want things that traders really care about, which is performance at the end of the day, being able to execute trades fast, get the settlement times, make sure things work, right? So the second thing is privacy. Make sure that traders don't have their positions exposed to anybody, like no one can see their positions, and they're able to do these things with or without people on the internet taking screenshots of how much money I'm holding on this exchange and what positions, what long or short positions I'm taking, right? So the lastly, if the exchange were to stop functioning, can the users basically exit from the exchange without the permission, right? So if you can check those three boxes, then you sort of have the ideal exchange design in our mind, right? So I think that's kind of the goal we want to achieve with Hibachi, and that's sort of what we embarked on the journey to build, right? So it's very much in this early phase right now. There's a bunch of the foundational blocks that are already in place, and in the coming months we plan to just build on those to get to materializing the stream, right? So that's the general outline of what Hibachi is, but happy to answer more questions as we jam.
Great stuff. And by the way, we didn't establish a protocol for how we want to co-host this, but Sam, whenever you want to ask a question, feel free to just unmute yourself or just jump in beforehand, and we can keep this rolling.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm starting right off the bat here. So summarizing, let's talk a bit, I guess, about the tech, the architecture of Hibachi, what you're building, because ultimately we're here to talk tech, but of course later on we can also talk more product, trader, like user experience, market, and so on. But like, I think if we compare what people are building in the space right now, anything from general purpose chains to like application chains to applications on other chains, right? It's also interesting to look at what trade-offs are you making and why are you making them, and what's like the ultimate goal. And with Hibachi, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like on the trade-off spectrum, you have centralized components. For example, it sounds like for the performance, there's gonna be like a single sequencer that you sort of like that gives you really fast performance, right? Like this Binance like latency, like milliseconds, maybe close to microseconds. But you like the difference to Binance or FTX is this application, like this sequencer application cannot it cannot, like, it's verifiable essentially thanks to ZK. There's like the rules of the exchange that are enforced by ZK proof. Plus the data ordering is also enforced by virtue of using posting blobs on Celestia, right? So the application inputs, the data is verifiable on chain thanks to Celestia's technology, and the actual business logic of what you wrote probably in Rust with Hibachi and proven by SP1s async is also enforceable via ZK, magic. Ultimately, what this leads to, I suppose, is that a user should be able to be sovereign and self-custodial, and eventually also force exit the exchange in case you guys do something like illicit, like wrong, like breaking the rules, or actually I just shut it off. That's like the property 3 that you mentioned. I mean, the property 1, the performance, is probably coming from sort of having a beefy node, I suppose, that is running the exchange, that is policed by ZK. The other aspect, the privacy, I think that's one of your key differentiators. Can you let's talk a bit about that aspect, because it's privacy more in the sense of how when I'm trading on Kraken or Binance, it's also private in the sense no other people can see it on chain. It's not public on chain, right? Which is usually the big sort of drawback of decentralized exchanges. Everything is published on chain, your positions are publicly viewable, but yours isn't a fully anonymous end-to-end trading. Technically, You can see the positions in trade as the operator, right? But they're not like openly broadcasted like they are on Hyperliquid, where anyone can hunt them. Or am I getting this wrong? Right. And also, did I get the other parts right? Right? Like, so let's.
That's good. That's great. So I think the way I like to think about this is like, there's different levels to where we're seeing privacy or privacy, right? So in this particular case, from a trader's point of view, like if you're using Kraken, we are obviously not collecting any user information. Like there is like no KYC or anything of that sort. So we don't really store user information in that sense. So in that sense, like we don't really have anything about the user, right? So on top of that, your transactions are like not broadcasted to the public, not during the transaction and not after the transaction, right? So even when the transaction is done and you prove the state, and when you're posting the data to Celestia, you're still posting an encrypted state of that's the meme Clobs and blobs. So basically, you're posting an encrypted blob on Celestia, right? So the only reason, so today, the way it's set up in the initial, it's currently set up is basically we own the decryption key, and it's like all or nothing, right? So you either decrypt the entire thing and see everything in it, or you don't see anything, right? So, and that is something we'll be upgrading in the next update that we plan to push in the coming weeks. So there were two things we'll consider in doing that, right? So one was to either decentralize the key itself by using some sort of threshold signature scheme that allows us to derive the decryption key. But that wasn't quite, it was interesting, but it was still, it was still all or nothing, right? So you basically either derive the decryption key, decrypt the entire state, or you get nothing from it, right? So instead, what we're going to be doing is sort of implement this scheme where each user has their own decryption key that they can use to decrypt only their state, and then validate and see if their transaction or the latest transaction was included in the proof without having to decrypt anything else, right? So this way you still maintain the general state to be private from public, but then as a user, you can essentially just verify your own transactions by decrypting them, and then you can maintain that locally with yourself, right? So that kind of still gives you the ability to exit from the exchange if need be, using your personal state, but you're not looking at anybody else's information, right? So that's the general architecture around privacy. And the thing that is missing here is obviously it's not a client end-to-end encryption. So it's not like Signal or something where you encrypt on the client side, then execute the entire order book state inside like a TE or something, where the exchange has like no visibility. Like the operator does see the transactions today. And in theory, we can turn that into a full-on dark pool and just implement something where we do client-side encryption, run the entire state inside a T, and make it work. But I don't think that's something like the user's asking for at the moment. And more importantly, like they're kind of happy with the current state of things. In fact, they prefer this because oftentimes, if you're not like, as an operator, if something went wrong, it's much easier to fetch user information and fix things if you at least have access to some accounting and whatnot, right? If you don't, you're like, okay, I have no idea. You deal peer-to-peer, then it becomes a lot more tricky, right? And then the other thing is, it also presents a lot more scalability issues if we are to use like the current tech that exists. I mean, unless there's a better way to do it without using T's, but at that point we're talking about some kind of homomorphic encryption where you're basically using encrypted state to compute Orderbook on that. But that again, it doesn't scale to the degree we would like to. So if we have to draw like a trade-off between what's the kind of privacy that is okay and what's where do we draw the line, maybe like, okay, this is where we want performance, then you feel like this is actually a pretty good balance where you're sort of getting the benefits of decentralization, you're not exactly revealing user information to anybody outside of the user and the operator, and then at the same time, you're still getting the performance you need from the exchange and when you trade. So that's kind of where, like, there's no free lunch. But then if you were to think, okay, these are the things that make sense for these particular actors in this set of applications. So let's focus on those. Then it all works out. Right? So that's so how this is currently designed.
So Varun, can you walk me through what the trader's experience is, what they're actually exposing when they're trading? Is it the fact that they're depositing and withdrawing? Is that all that's leaked? And then the order books are just like anonymous, essentially?
Pretty much, right? So you go, it's like you connect your wallet, or you can just use your email to log in, and then you get your wallet key generated in your client side, and you're using that to sign all your trades, and then you compute a ZK proof that basically runs through the logic and make sure the order book logic was executed according to the rules that were predefined, and then make sure that all transactions were in fact signed by the users, and then you're essentially updating that proof, reposting that proof on the respective chains where the deposits came from. And then for DA purposes, you're basically posting it to Celestia after you're encrypting it. So that's generally the workflow. And then you're posting another ZK proof that essentially proves that the data that encrypts on Celestia does in fact point to so the encrypted data does in fact point to the right data set that was used to generate the first proof in the first place. So
that's cool. That's cool. It sounds like the experience is very much like what you would experience as a trader on a centralized exchange.
Yeah, pretty much.
You can't see who's trading what. You can just see the books moving around.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about why that's important? Why is it important that other traders can't see your trades? Maybe for some of the like larger traders, why that's so important to them?
Yeah, so I think okay, I guess I can't name the firm, but essentially, if you're talking to them, they're like, okay, we don't want people looking at the trades that we're doing or the positions we're holding. Right? Oftentimes, they're like, okay, we don't want our strategies to be leaked or people copy trading what we're doing. Some people want to be copy traded, right? If you go to Bybit, you see like literally a challenge where people earn fees from having people copy trade them. Maybe James Swin is a good example. Probably likes to be copy traded, but there is many others who don't want to. So it's really comes down to people not wanting to reveal the strategies and what they're doing, the activities be public, and especially with CT being vigilant about every activity everybody's doing. I think there's a large chunk of users who move lots of money, and they don't want the activities be tracked, right? So one is obviously not just for strategies is one, but also I think it comes with security, where you can probably index someone's accounting and many times just point out to who the real person is. And maybe you just don't want people to know who's behind those accounting things. So it's just general safety also comes down to protecting your alpha. And maybe some people do want that things copy traded, in which case we can, they can do that on the exchange. But we don't have copy trading feature today, but that's something we can push down the line. Where people wanting to be copy traded can do that, but then that's their choice.
I think one really good example is if there's a large whale that's sizing up in a particular position and they want to chip away at the book in doing it so they get a good execution price. As soon as someone sees that happen, people are going to rush in and they're going to get a worse execution price. So I think it is a really strong feature.
Exactly, right? So I think the whole James Smith saga, as much as it was a meme on the internet, it actually kind of was a good case for why that is actually not really ideal. Especially, I mean, he probably did it for the publicities, but at the same time, there's many real users who don't want to be in that position. So that's I think that's one of the bigger use cases why this makes sense.
Cool, nice. So let me get this straight. Can I, like, when I deposit to Hibachi, my deposit is known, but any trades I do on Hibachi thereafter, are they like settling back to my deposit so everybody can see my deposit moving back and forth, or is it like once I withdraw from the exchange, that's when people can see again?
you can revert a different address. It doesn't have to be the same deposit address, right? So you can basically go address A, do whatever, and then yeah, this sounds like Tornado Cash.
Yes, it's
I don't want to say that.
yeah,
But no, in a compliant way, yes, it actually works.
Yes. All right, cool. So I guess like my individual trades, technically you cannot like track them publicly, right? That I do with like every trade I did. It's yeah, cool, nice. Super cool. And I certainly actually I realized when thinking about Hibachi, like I really like this key differentiator, because usually you think, okay, why do you still use sexes? Often it's because they have the best off-ramping to bank accounts or something, if you want to go back to fiat, right? Or it's liquidity or certain coins that are hard to trade on EVM chains, for example. But actually, I realized that a lot of times it's also really for me about privacy, right? Like it's, hey, maybe there's certain positions or trades that I want to make that I don't want to be, attached to my ENS. Or I mean, if you're trading on another address and you have an ENS, you can be pretty sure that people can associate that other address with you. And ENS is very hard, right? Like to not be able to do that. So I think it's a really strong feature as well. One thing I was wondering is you mentioned like ZK is ready now, and we certainly. I've been around in crypto for a long time, so I know, like, I mean, back in the day, shout out to DYDX when they were building on StarkX or something like many years ago, right? But actually, I think 2 years ago, so we were one of the first roll-up as a service providers that were actually running ZK VMs in production. We ran the old version that's now been deprecated of the Polygon CDK in production, and we actually saw how crazy like things got with proving costs and slowness and this and that. I know that SP1 has like Uma actually had her on the podcast as well. Listeners, make sure to go back a couple episodes. You can listen to an amazing pod I did with Uma from Succinct. I know that they've been cooking, but like performance is still really, really important for you, right? Like so how are you able to run so much like ZK magic and at the same time achieve this insane performance? Like where's the under coming from? Is it all like ZK actually being ready, or do you have like some tricks there to work around the constraints?
So I think what's interesting is SP1 actually did a really good job of abstracting like lots of the complexity. So when we were plugging it in, it felt very much like just open a box and then it just works, right? So I think that they actually did a really, really good job in that sense, in terms of making like something really complex and making really easy to use for any users. Like, I mean, we had to write a bunch of code, but it was like not necessarily. If we did like very little work that was cryptography related, like most of the work that we had to do was to basically write the guest program that basically runs inside the ZK VM. And the guest program is basically making sure that the rules of the order book were followed correctly. It's making sure the price, it runs according to price time priority sequence, making sure the liquidations were handled correctly, making sure the balances were changing and there was no negative balances necessarily. So things like that. So those are the checks that the guest program runs, and right now it's pubs. So obviously it's pub specific. Once we add like things like spot or multi-collateral, then it'll check for those and risk parameters. So that's what the guest program is really doing. And then that's kind of where most of our efforts went into. Because once that was ready, then obviously we had to, so I think we had to spend a little more time figuring out the right set of hardware requirements and drivers and so on, particularly to make sure the whole Celestia's service is compatible with SP1's new version and so on. But once you kind of figure those things out and fine tune them, the rest is like fairly straightforward. And into performance, just to give you context, right? Like I think, but this is not a criticism of Stark. I think they built some of the most cutting-edge technology. Like back in 2019, 2020, it was taking nearly 8 hours to compute that proof, which basically now is like 10 to 15 minutes. And we've been posting a new proof, right? So that's like a significant improvement in the amount of time it takes to generate a proof and post it. So, and I'm sure that Stark is like working on their new variant to bring those times down too. So, but yeah, so just to give you context on that plus the infra, right? Again, at the time you were only limited to writing in Cairo, or you had to learn Cairo, and that was the only that's all you had. And now you can basically write the entire guest program in Rust, and it just works, right? So it made like the dev costs and resources, the infra required to run the entire thing, then combined with obviously the prover times and everything, is just much, much better than it used to be like 5-6 years ago. And that, I think, again, like Risk Zero guys did a phenomenal job of building that, right? So, and obviously Succinct and Uma have done a fabulous job again to really bring this technology to the masses, I reckon, and making it cool. So
I'm curious about the succinct integration. Were there many tricky bits about needing to strip down the dependencies to like the raw basics, or was it actually just super flexible?
Say it again, sorry.
So for succinct, when you're using Rust, was it flexible with what you could use in the dependencies? Like, could you just pull in crates freely and create the proofs?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Exactly. There was like almost, I was like, oh wait, there's like a pre-compile for most of the need. I'm like, this is actually pretty easy. This is pretty neat.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And the other thing that I assumed was that the Orderbook matching wasn't part of the proof, but it sounds like it is. So is the entire Orderbook, like every order that comes in and out, is that included in the proof?
So not in the V1, but in the next version we're going to push in the guest program, it's going to include the logic as well. So that's basically where the entire tree is going to be merkleized, basically.
That's cool.
It's going to be, and then that's going to be proven as well. So that is something that's been worked on currently.
One of the biggest challenges that historically with ZK proofs for something like an Orderbook is just the cost and time it took to prove. You spoke to it briefly. Can you touch on that more? How much has it reduced? What is it costing you guys per trade, for instance, at the moment?
So at the moment, we're spending like, I need to quickly check the cost into my head, but I think as long as the trade has at least like $5, not $5, like $2, we're breaking even. Not breaking even, but I think we're profitable on the trade. So I think it's costing it, yeah. But anything like, it's like a 50-cent trade, then probably there's an issue there, right? So, but anything more than like $2, and I think it's generally, we're not losing money on it. So
that's cool. And you guys you've got a limit. It's like $1, I think, on Hibachi, right?
Yeah. So which is why we have that. I think it's a $10 limit. Actually, no, it is a $1 limit. So which is why like anything more than $1. Initially, we thought about imposing $10, but I'm like, we can make it $1. That's fine. $1 we're breaking even, but it's like not bad because even at $10, it's like because no one is going to trade perhaps and use like $1. Maybe you can have a test that has $1.42, and I use that. But that's for testing purposes. But generally speaking, yeah, I think because I know at some point, using maybe I should not share the exact numbers. We're gonna have an NDA there, but in terms of the cost. So, but anyway, it was like the proving costs were like in the range of like 7 figures, right, annually, and that was adding up. So I think with the new tech, that number has been significantly lower than that.
That's awesome. It's crazy how fast the ZK space has moved, and that it's like immediately unlocking applications.
Yeah, and I think Uma would be quick to remind us that this is probably all because you don't use EVM, and the EVM is super bad for proving, and you go the sort of ZK-VM route, right? Like directly in SP1 with Rust native programs. Like she usually says that EVM was just written in a way, or at least the current versions of EVM just don't lend themselves much to proving. But of course, you have some drawbacks from not using EVM, right? Like EVM comes with a lot of standardization around tooling and so on. So let's talk about, for example, the bridge, right? Like it's not so easy for you to just say, hey, layer 0, for example, please be the bridge here. I guess maybe the point for you is to have your own native trustless Hibachi ZK bridge, like a roll-up bridge, right? I suppose, or something of sorts. So ultimately, is the only or main reason for you to publish all of your data on Celestia and to produce these ZK proofs, it's there to essentially have a non-custodial trustless bridge, right, to other chains, so that you can have a bridge client that in a sort of neutral way can say, okay, yes, this user can withdraw from the exchange, and you don't need a custodian for that, right?
Yes, I think there's a couple of points there, right? So the main reason why we need like the whole Celestia DA is primarily to allow anybody to recreate the state, and that is helpful in like creating escape hatch or like exit scenarios. Because if you're not trying to exit or force exit from the exchange, then you don't really need that DA. I mean, maybe sure you can run the code and see if your proof is included, if your transaction is in the proof, and it's kind of cool to see. But like an average user is never going to really do that, right? So, but on the other hand, like a good example is divide, and it doesn't always have to be FTX as an example. Like divide DX V3 was a great example where they migrated from V3 to kind of sunsetting that to move on fully to V4. I think they kind of they paused the exchange and the people were able to exit from divide DX V3. And they kind of processed that with, I remember they did that, and that was pretty neat, right? So those kind of circumstances that, having the DA, it goes a long way, right? So, but that being said, one quick disclaimer, like, I mean, we want to be trustless, but today there are certain trust assumptions. For example, the smart contracts themselves are upgradable. So that is something, people talked about a month ago about how we can upgrade the contracts and therefore, this is unethical and so on. But anyway, so ignoring the noise, I think generally speaking, we have it on the roadmap to make the remove that centralized dependency. But for now, I think we need to iterate fast. So yeah, we need that upgradability to make sure.
Yeah, I think it would almost be unethical if they were immutable at this stage, given that there's probably also still some bugs here and there that have to be quickly hot fixed.
Yeah.
But like just in terms of the spirit here is okay. Even though like Hibachi is like branded more as like a verifiable application, there's still a chain here in the picture. The chain being Celestia, right? Like a chain of chains. And the idea is still that people can run a sort of decentralized version of Hibachi to essentially exit the exchange. And this is like the bridge, right? Like which currently is like an upgradable contract, but at some point is the idea for this like how does the bridge work? Is like, are you guys just processing, like, is it like a multi-sig bridge, or is it using ZK proofs from Celestia already?
So there's no bridge necessarily. I think what's going on is, as a user, you accept deposits in any of the respective chains where you want to. For example, right now it's on Arbitrum, so you take USDT on Arbitrum, and then you post ZK proofs on Arbitrum to make sure that when a user wants to withdraw funds from Arbitrum, the chain is aware of the most recent state, right? So, and in a world where everything goes well, then no problem, right? You just go and you withdraw your funds from the chain where you made the deposit. Now, if you want to exit from the chain, then you kind of need the Celestia DA. You use that to fetch your Merkle proof, and then you take the Merkle proof, present that to Arbitrum chain, and then it will check to see your state does in fact point. You can use a proof to derive the Merkle root that's present on Arbitrum, and then you withdraw the funds from that, right? So that's the hard way of doing it. So there's no bridging necessarily. Now, obviously, if you want to add like more chains, like let's say we add expand Solana or we add Base or something like that, then the way it's currently architected is we have like a satellite. We have like the master chain where most of the deposits, but that's the default chain. And then we've got like a bunch of satellite chains where the state will propagate. So if there are like deposits on multiple chains that are coming in, then you're basically posting proofs on chains where the most recent transactions took place. And if a user wants to, let's say, withdraw from base after certain transactions, then you'll essentially use cross-chain communication to relay the most latest chain. There's one canonical chain, right? Today's Arbitrum, it could be anything. That basically propagates the state to other chains via like cross-chain messaging or message passing. So at the moment for that, we're using Wormhole, but it's primarily for message passing. But at the moment, it's only on Arbitrum, right? So we are not really using any other chains. So that functionality is there, but we haven't really utilized that for anything yet. But once we deploy the Solana and our other chains, then I think that whole message passing will become more interesting, because then there'll be some cross-chain communication and so on. But we're still debating if that's the right way to do it, or is there a cleaner way that involves like lesser dependencies as opposed to adding more things. Because anytime you add more things, the more complex it gets. It's like not good, right? So you'd rather minimize the dependencies and then see if you achieve the same thing. So today, like no bridging. In the future, likely some kind of cross messaging or message passing. Hopefully not. So we'll see.
I wanted to shift the questions to your experience with RFQ, if that's all right. So Jeff from Hyperliquid's had a lot of commentary on RFQ and this like some inherent problems with RFQ, particularly if for their evolution ever becoming the source of price discovery. You're one of the few people that have built both an RFQ system as well as an exchange. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about this like RFQ free option problem, and where you see, if you see fully on-chain, well, sorry, not strictly fully on-chain, but on-chain order books really being able to dominate that market.
Yeah, no. So I think RFQ is an interesting one. I think a general philosophy on RFQ is that, you know, it's a if you're going for fully on-chain user experience, like the Uniswap types, so then RFQ is a smarter way to deploy liquidity and move capital around, because it's kind of, again, that's with the caveat that, you know, that model worked really well when Ethereum was the main chain. Like I think now with like the new modern L1s, which are much faster, maybe there's a world in which you don't need to worry about things like, because on Ethereum, for example, I'll tell you in 2020, the free option was a big deal, right? Because anytime a market maker, because there's two ways to do it. You get the taker to sign the intent, but then market maker gets the last look and they get to submit the transaction on chain and relay it, right? In this case, your maker gets the last look, which is good for market makers, but then it breaks composability. Like you can't really integrate with anything else besides your own thing, right? So unless you have Jupyter-like distribution, you're pretty much limited in terms of what you could do. On the other hand, if you do go with RFQ T model, where your taker is the one that gets the last look, then the good thing with that is it's composable, meaning like every aggregator wallet can integrate you as a protocol, but the limitation there is your taker gets a free option, right? So if your quote has a 30-second expiry, then your taker is basically sitting on 20 seconds, see if the price moves, and then submit or not. So that becomes sort of the toxic flow that you don't want, right? So at the time, the way we, you know, kind of, it became more of a cat and mouse game, where you sort of figure out what addresses are, you know, participating toxic behavior. You try to not send them an RFQ, or maybe don't. What you do is you widen the spreads for those particular addresses so that they will stop trying to pick, you know, stop picking you. So I think those are some of the things that they deployed, and over time, you know, once L2s came about, that had much more faster block finality. It was much easier to create, like, you know, give them like more aggressive, like 10-second code expiries. And it was much quicker, right? So I think that also helped in like reducing the spread further. And now Solana is much quicker, right? So I think we right now we've been on Solana, we've integrated Jupiter and so on, and we've been able to capture a lot more volume without market makers having to worry about the toxic flow that we had with Ethereum and other chains with larger block time confirmations. So all that is to say, I think RFQ was a good. If you think of Uniswap as a good way to bootstrap new markets, then RFQ is a good evolution to basically give you access to like a bunch of retail long coins that again with not as much capital requirement, and you can freely move that money. And a great example is like last year with the meme coin mania. Like every week there was a new coin that was trading, and there was and then it had a life cycle of 2 weeks, right? So in that case, one thing you could do is just park your capital passively and pray. Or alternatively, you can just be an RFQ maker and then just take like 10K and do like millions in volume, because each of the ticket size like $5, $10. That's what everybody was trading. And in a week, it was gone. But then you can move that capital more effectively. So I think RFQ in that scenario was actually quite good, right? So especially for this long-tail spot, where you don't want to take the risk of creating an order book, but you also don't want to take the risk of throwing your capital passively in a pool, in which case you can just effectively move capital back and forth for the time cycle when the market is actually live, then it's dead, then you move out, right? So
that's interesting. So it sounds like you think there's going to be a long-term use case for RFQ in that kind of middle range market, like that for tokens that aren't liquid enough for a book, but for market makers that don't want to just either market makers that don't want to sit it in an LP, or users that don't want to be exposed to MEV.
Questions. It's funny that this was the use case that we discovered after we built it, because we thought RFQ means like large traders who don't want to have slippage, they will request quotes, kind of like what's Falcon X style, where you'll have like big guys moving $10 million ticket sizes, don't want to get exposed, and they will like request RFQ, right? That's what we thought, a DeFi version of that. But turns out it turned out to be like a $5 meme coin traders who move lots of volume. so it was the exact opposite of it. But that's kind of how that was a nice evolution of that. So
there you go. You found PMF, unlikely sources. Nice one.
Yeah.
I've got more technical questions though. I don't want to steal the show. Can I keep going them? Okay. The question I wanted to ask was about cancel priority. This is a semi-hot topic in order books. I'm curious, are you guys working on cancel priority? Is this something you see beneficial, or is it's not on the cards for Hibachi?
At the moment we're using FIFO, so I think that's kind of how we built it, right? So
and sorry, can you speak to, just for the audience sake, what is cancel priority and why is it important? Why may it be important to some in some use cases?
Yeah. So I think so basically FIFO, I can just describe both. So FIFO is first in, first out. So basically, that's cancel priority in this case. But you're basically saying is the more actively you are involved in trading on the order book, you get preference. Like on first in, first out, you place an order, you can wait. But as long as you got in the order book first, you will get out last. So you'll get to you have your trade executed first. So if I went before Sam, then no matter what, my order will get executed before Sam's does get executed, right? On the other hand, if there's a cancel priority remains, then I can Sam is sitting there for like a while on the order book. If I go and I show more activity of placing and canceling and doing more things, then I will get the preference in terms of getting my order placed quickly, right? So the latter means you show more activity on the order book and likely good for like high volume, if you want to incentivize high volume rather quickly. I think cancel priority is actually a good way to do it. Right? On the other hand, if you want to go with basically more of the old school approach, where you're going to build like deep books, then I think FIFO is the way to do it. I think Hyperliquid, goes with cancel priority. That's the approach. Whereas if you look at Binance, OKX, Bybit, they go with FIFO. So I think it's just a matter of what you want to go about optimizing. I don't know if there's a one, this is the right approach, this is the wrong approach. It's just a matter of, what you want to incentivize, and you can choose. So in our case, we decided to go with FIFO. But then again, I don't have a strong preference necessarily to I want this over the other.
Okay, I think that leads to my next question about market makers. So against priority is interesting to some market makers. Some market makers like it, some don't. But I'm curious, what else, when you're talking to market makers, what are the key things that they raise first? Like, what is important to them when deciding to deploy, or while already deployed, and what are they asking for?
Yeah, so from market makers' point of view, from our conversations, they typically tend to prefer, at least they preferred FIFO, mainly because again, it just gives them more, there's more predictability there, right? So and then also it incentivizes quote persistence over time, and it's also just more easier to deal with. So I think that's kind of the general preference around. So that's why we kind of built it around that. And at the end of the day, I think we want to bootstrap liquidity first. So it made sense that market makers bring in liquidity. So to build around what incentivizes those guys, which is also the reason we at the moment made the maker fee 0 to bring in more liquidity. And then down the line, once there's more liquidity, you get the flywheel started by bringing in takers then, and then things, you get the ball rolling. But outside of that, I think in terms of feature sets, things early on, I think obviously like the APIs, they're as close as possible to Bybit, Binance. It's nice to have things like CCXT integration is nice. I think as an alpha on this call is we'll be live on CCXT in the next, waiting for the PR to get approved. We already submitted the PR, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that should open up the SDK for anyone to use. Then outside of that, I think general analytics tools that they can use to understand more user behavior is usually something they've asked for, both in RFQ context as well as here. But otherwise, and then obviously the big one. That I think this was initially, they're okay, if you can make sure that our transactions are not public to everybody, I think that is something that they would prefer a lot. So I think that is something that worked out. One interesting thing was is a lot of institutions use MPC wallets, and the legacy stock software was not very compatible with MPC. But so I think we are in the process of actually creating a new variant that actually supports MPC wallets. So that is something actually that's nice to have from a market maker perspective. Fix APIs, interestingly, you generally think you have exchange institutions you need to do fix. Surprisingly, in crypto, not many people have asked for fix APIs. I mean, they're yeah, fix is really good, but you don't really need that. I think, there's a few exchanges that have it. I think OKX and Crypto.com do offer, and Coinbase do offer fix, but I don't think that has been the thing that everyone wants, despite all the beliefs that we might. So that's something just to think about. Not the feature that was it's good in TradFi, but maybe not here, not yet. And then
just quick context for the listeners: Fix is a TradFi trading protocol, essentially, like binary customized for order books. Is that right?
Yeah. And the reason it's think of it as a language that finance bros speak to trade things with each other, right? So it's like the calculus is to mathematicians, Fix is to traders.
It highlights that there's still a big divide between crypto market makers and TradFi, or maybe they're just compatible with both. It's not
and the reason I even brought up Fix is because I thought initially when I was starting to get into building action, I thought maybe Fix is something we need to prioritize. That's going to be one of the big things that is going to stand out. But then once we start actually building, maybe wrong assumption. You don't need Fix. In fact, you can wait a lot longer, right? So I think that's kind of where. So there was a bunch of things that the initial assumptions were X, then turned out maybe this is a big one. Is we think custody is the biggest thing. In fact, I still see many exchanges sell is the best of both worlds, or where you get the best centralized exchange without custody. I don't like people don't care about custody. It's like I want them to care about it, but it's like they just don't, right? So in fact, many of them prefer that someone custody their funds. In fact, many makers ask for integrations where we can just directly work with their custodians to not even move funds from the custodians, just directly work to have net settlement with the custodian. That way we don't actually move funds. So basically everyone, the preference is to have as low movement of the funds as possible. I think that's what everybody's optimizing for, as opposed to who sits with the funds. Especially large institutions, like they don't want to hold the funds themselves many times. So I think that's one of the things, for the longest time I was like, this is the most important piece, but turns out that's like if you're building for that, chances are the market doesn't really care about it. So those are just one of the things I learned from building.
Particularly for three people that have come from the DeFi trenches. That's a surprising insight.
Yeah, but I do think what is interesting though is people do value things like privacy, speed, but also essentially even when I say people can exit in doomsday scenario, right? That is not necessarily a selling point unless it becomes one, right? So, but having that thing is like assuring, but that alone is not going to get users to come to your platform. Like despite having all those things, you just have to have your liquidity and build things that allow people to do more interesting things, like create new interesting market types, create more of these gamified experiences for people to come do more fun things. Like if you look at Binance, OKX, it looks like a casino, right? So, and the reason they built it like that, the interface, it looks like you walked into Las Vegas, right? So, and you go and all of a sudden it's a slot machine, right? So I think that's really what you're designing for when you're building an exchange. So, so your whole messaging and everything else at the end of the day, you can start with some infra and then talk about some value props, but eventually you're selling a casino, right? So if you really want to get the thing to get a lot more people to use and have fun with it, right? So, and then obviously the back end, the infra must just be there, but it should be hidden. It should not be the thing that you lead with. So I'm going to say it's important because you don't want to run into another FTX or Mt. Gox scenario, but at the same time, you can't use fear as a tactic to get users to use the platform. You have to just make sure that thing is not even a risk to begin with, learning from the lessons of the past, but that you're still selling the same, casino, a shiny object to people to go and gamble. Right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So what's your end game vision for Hibachi? Talking about user experiences and so on. Actually, a good old friend of mine, Nathan, I should have him on soon. He's building this app called Euphoria. I think he's basically focusing on new trading experiences. I've also recently seen that someone built a crazy interface on top of Hyperliquid. Also, we saw Phantom adopting Hyperliquid, for example, trading directly in app. So for Hibachi, where if everything goes according to plan or to your dream, I don't know how far you think there, but where will Hibachi be in 5 years? Is it going to be backend infrastructure and you have a bunch of interfaces that connect to it, to the same exchange, or are you building the main trading experience yourself? Do you feel the way you talk, it sounds like you might know what traders want, right? Do you feel like you'll be able to build the best interface on top yourself? How are you approaching this?
I think at the end of the day, I realized I'm more of a product person and I enjoy building consumer products a lot more than building B2B applications. I mean, they're both fun. And one makes money, which is good. So, but at the end of the day, I think I kind of really enjoy building products that people love. I think that's it's like creating art, right? You build it, but then you also want people to sort of there's something fulfilling about someone using it, and then seeing a smile on their face. They're like, okay, why? This is actually kind of nice, right? So I think the goal for Hibachi, personally speaking, build obviously. simply put, I'm like, I want to build the best exchange that anyone can use, right? So, but now, if I have to be more pragmatic about it, I don't think it's going to be a winner take it all scenario. It's going to be where you had a 3 to 4, maybe 5 winners emerge over time, which will take a percentage of the market share, right? So, like just 3 years ago, you had pretty much the 3 horsemen, 4 horsemen, but 1 died, so 3 now. So, who control the entire market share, right? So you've got OKX, Bybit, Binance, pretty much 95% of the perps volume, and then Hyperliquid in the last couple of years. I think that market share kind of shifted 70-30, right? So slowly you can see the whole DEX market share sort of emerge in a way that like no one expected, right? So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to having these 4 or 5 or 6, big players who take up a percentage of the market share, depending on the unique traits that they offer, right? So Binance, for example, positions themselves as your gateway to crypto, right? Basically, if you want anything crypto, you think of Binance. It's like everyone's exchange. Then Bybit has this positioning around more focused on pro traders. So if you want to do something more at the pro level, then I think you're kind of going to Bybit. And Coinbase has sort of covered its monopoly on or stranglehold the US markets. So you think of US and you think of Coinbase, right? And OKX has got an interesting branding. It's kind of somewhere between Bybit and Binance, but you don't really know. But at the same time, they are one of the legacy exchanges, which has been there for a while. But I think it's sort of more retail leaning, but at the same time, they offer really good APIs and so on. So same way, for example, Hyperliquid right now, they're taking a stance of performant order book, really good product, highly liquid, and then transparent L1 focused. And then more importantly, they're going up to Hyperliquid L1, where anyone can build more building blocks on top of this, where Hyperliquid liquidity becomes the commodity they're selling, right? So we are taking a slightly different stance here. I don't think we want to build a chain. We want to build an exchange, and we want to be an exchange first. So the idea here is to build an exchange that can, we're starting with pubs. Some of the things on the roadmap include spot, then adding multi-collateral, then building a unified accounting system, then adding things like FX, then expanding to mobile, right? So really it's more consumer driven. So the goal here would be, what is the best way to build the best consumer facing application that still adheres to the ethos of, what makes crypto interesting, right? So, and I think the technology is finally there. It's just a matter of actually building it and having the good taste to build the products, right? So I think that's just really what it comes down to. So I think, that's really what it is, with Hibachi, build an exchange that makes people happy, right? So I think that's really the end goal.
Cool, nice. And just my last question to round it off, and Sam, feel free to throw in your last question or questions as well at this point in the wrap up. So how do you think, you already gave your sort of I would say your bigger thesis on the market is it's not a monopoly, it's not a winner takes all. It's there's going to be multiple winners. So you're not afraid to play offense here, take a stance and grab some market share, right? Which makes sense. If you think about it. But structurally speaking, what makes a DEX special? What makes Hyperliquid special? What makes Hibachi special, right? Is it the permissionless aspect, the sort of reg arb, if you will, of okay, you can have no KYC, you can have permissionless market creation and so on? Is that really driving it, the permissionless markets and so on? And also, do you have any opinions on the assets that trade on Hibachi? Are you more into meme coins? Do you build your product with certain assets in mind, or are you saying no, this thing will trade stonks one day, right? Stonk perps, like Robinhood is now, and everybody is now, saying they will do. How do you think about that?
So it's a combination of both, right? So one is a novelty aspect of it, right? And then the other one is obviously, why does anyone use a DEX, right? So no KYC and is like a big deal, right? So that's one of the big reasons why people use DEX, because if you just click connect your wallet, start trading, that's actually much better than going through the entire process, right? And then you may not be able to access exchange in many other jurisdictions anyway, so that doesn't help, right? So Korea is a good example. Like you have a bit and Bithumb, but you can't trade on leverage on any of those exchanges. Like I think it's illegal actually. So you are either left with the option of going to any other bigger exchange like Bybit, etc., outside Korea, or if there's an exchange, a DEX that can actually give you that experience, then you go there, right? So Japan is similar markets, right? So so that being said, there is the KYC aspect of it, but then also comes a novelty, right? So like when BitMEX came about, that was the first time anyone discovered. I mean, they invented perps, and then they added like the 100x leverage, and then it was, wait a minute, what is 100x leverage? Let me trade. So there was a novelty around that. Then FTX came about, and they expanded the market to be like, oh, why not just do Bitcoin? Let's actually do this across like every coin, and then they kind of got the mind share there, right? So, and then Pump.fun, again, meme coins, like there's that. So Hyperliquid, they kind of, it's interesting, they kind of rose from the ashes of DYDX in many ways, which I hate to say, because DYDX was a good product, but I think kind of the pivot to V4 was, I don't know. So, but I think that kind of gave Hyperliquid the opportunity to just build something interesting, but also it was a pretty well executed product overall, right? So, and I think they also do offer, also I think compared to DYDX, their market listing strategy was way more aggressive. And I think those are one of the more interesting things, that you could actually do high leverage bets on Hyperliquid in a way that was not possible on like DYDX or even GMX at the time, right? So the moment with Hibachi, again, obviously have the privacy and the speed angle, but we do need to introduce like new market types and new things that people can gamble on, right? So I think because otherwise, if that ingredient is missing, then everything else is sort of like, you're kind of chasing as opposed to leading with something. So there are a few things I can't really mention yet on what are those products in the works, but me describing all this thesis is to give you a hint on like, one of the things that are going to differentiate us is like not going to use speed or privacy, but it's the kind of markets that we create and the types of products that we introduce that people can trade. That's really going to make the big difference, right? So as opposed to another perhaps exchange that is saying we are more fast, or like, I mean, they're cool things to be fast and private, but or anything else. But I think if you really want to get the users, then you need like something more interesting than that. Like Hyperliquid also had vaults, which was actually a pretty novel innovation right into the DEX space, where anybody can become a hedge fund now. You just fund a pool, and then their market makers basically use that to generate yield. So basically you need more novel like products like that get like users more interested and help them make money, right? So if you have something that can be useful by people to make money, then they will probably come by. So that's kind of where I think our mindset is, like, what kind of new products can we introduce that let people like, do more degen things or more gamble, or basically it's not just about capturing market share from existing markets, but it's also how do you grow the total market to have a just increase the TAM as opposed to trying to fight for the same thing, that same part that exists, right? Because there's still a lot of users who are not in crypto yet who have like big pockets or deep pockets, and they can actually do a lot more. It's just a lot of, how do you get them on board?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we've got the pie is much bigger than we realize. We're really, like, so much attention goes into this like slice of innovators, and I think there's a massive opportunity, particularly when you get to like FX and equities, like you're talking about. I think that was a great question to end on. So I've got nothing else to add there, Luis.
No, thank you, Luis and Sam. That was lovely.
Thanks, Varun. Thanks, Sam. It was great, and I definitely learned a ton. Some of it was way out of my depth, so I have to re-listen that one and learn a bunch. Great to have both of you on, and yeah, definitely. Thanks, Varun. great what you're building there at Hibachi. Can't wait to try it out.
Thanks a lot, Varun. But it was a pleasure to chat.
No, likewise, guys. Thank you so much. Okay.
Catch you guys.